Hey guys, this is a compilation of stories from Reddit users. Thank you so much for allowing me to use these for my video. Their usernames will be listed with each story and in the description. Go check them out. Me and my family experiences paranormals before a loved one passes away. For example, the night before my grandma passed away, my sister was laying on the couch in her living room watching TV. Her bedroom door was creaked open and she could see inside from where she was laying. She witnessed someone walking into her closet. The next thing that happened was that we had a chihuahua named Tiny, who slept at the end of my parents' bed. The same night and around the same time as my sister's experience, my mom saw someone walk from the hallway towards her bedroom, and Tiny wouldn't stop growling this hideous growl. The next morning, we all received news that my grandma was brain dead. My mom experienced something similar a day before my brother-in-law was killed in a horrible car crash. I used to play with a boy down the street when I was young. The picture of him is even now still vivid in my mind. Whatever I was playing that day, he'd just join in and play until I was called inside. But the creepy thing is, whenever I would tell my parents about him, they would just say I had been playing by myself all along. So, in my dream, I was outside Grandma's home. She had passed away when this happened. In my dream, I saw her smiling creepily standing near the door. Her hair was a weird mess sticking out in all the weird possible ways. I ignored the dream and didn't add it much importance. Until one early morning, I witnessed a black figure sitting, more like in a crawling position, on the top of my roof. For a moment, I stared, and the next, it was gone. The strange thing is, it had the same haircut as my grandma in my dream. The other time I was home alone, I stepped out of the shower and was wiping my face when I saw a pitch black hand on my shoulder. But of course, nothing was there. To this day, I do not know what to make of it. Was it something paranormal or just the mind playing tricks on me? This story is not an experience but one from someone I trust. Their story goes that they had some kind of creature try to trick him into letting it into his house. For some background, he lived with his parents and his home was in a pretty secluded but nearest to the suburbs area. His mom was home with him and she was in the shower at the time of this occurrence. So the story goes that he was sitting in his room with the window open doing his regular relaxing thing when from outside the house he heard his mom call out, asking him where he had put the shirt he'd borrowed from her. He didn't borrow such shirt and he replied with saying as such. He thought it was weird but he wrote it off. He looked out his window and couldn't see his mother anywhere, so he got up out of his room, realizing that the water was still running in the shower. Weirded out, he went downstairs and called for his mom, and her voice came from behind the shut and locked front door. He says that her voice was very sweet and tender, using a tone that she would have used when he was little. And she asked him, "Annan, please let me in." Annan isn't his real name, by the way, just not going to use his real name. And then he says he heard the water shut off from the shower and then the sounds of claws rolling down the front door. The voice of his mother came from behind the front door again, asking to be let in, followed by an immediate "Annan, I love you," with the sounds of claws still rolling there. He very quickly backed away from the door and went upstairs to retrieve his revolver, but as soon as he came back downstairs, the voice and the rolling claws were gone. No trace, no nothing of who or what it could possibly have been. My buddy and I were going down a country road when a beach ball-sized glowing ball of light crossed in front of us. It was hovering about 3 feet off the ground. I saw it, and after about 30 seconds of silence, he looked at me and was like, "You saw that shit too, right?" It was following the power lines, like how when you're in a wooded area and they clear the area where the power lines go through. The only other time that comes to my mind was pulling up to my house, middle of the woods, so there was nothing around. As soon as I parked, something hit the roof of my truck so hard I nearly shit myself. I waited 5 minutes before getting out. There was nothing. I thought maybe a bird dive bombed me, but never heard anything after the initial noise and never saw anything. There are multiple stories about one house I grew up in. Following are the most memorable. One house I lived in when I was a teenager had stuff go flying off a wall shelf unit. Helium balloons we had left over from a party would somehow teleport around the house, despite having no path of getting ahead of you. It would be in one room on the second floor, then all of a sudden in the laundry room in the basement, bobbing up and down like it was being tugged on. I was alone there one night and decided to go out. Locked the house up. My parents were at our boat over an hour drive away. I came home to see the dining room chairs stacked up along with other kitchen items in a magnificent way, leaning against a ceiling fan. I would routinely see the light in the hallway turn on and shadows of feet under my closed door, walking back and forth at night despite hearing both my parents snoring in their room. The worst one was at one night I had a couple of friends over and I lived in the basement apartment of this house at this time. We heard the doorknob to outside start jiggling. Not expecting anyone, I went over and flung the door open to no one there. This doorknob jiggling kept happening and all of us being too freaked out just ignored it. After a while there was pounding on the walls just circling around us. My friends decided to leave. I was left alone for the rest of the night hearing footsteps, walking up and down the stairs to my basement apartment. Later on, we had a tenant take up the basement apartment. He would say he would routinely see an old lady just standing and staring at him down there. When I was a kid, maybe like 11 or 12, I came home from school one day to make myself a snack. I opened our cutlery drawer to find distinctly different forks than the ones we had always had. Like 3 prongs instead of 4, different shaped tines, different shaped handles. Subtle but unmistakable. I had been using these all my life up until that point. I showed them to my family, bemused at first, stating bluntly, "Oh, we got new forks." Everyone denied it. "No, these are the forks we've always had." My alarm grew. Clearly they had bought new forks. I'd eaten every meal of my life with the same forks. I knew my forks. These were not them. I insisted, but they persisted. These were the forks we'd always had. They began to look at me strangely. I pointed out the clear and obvious differences. The tines. Look at the tines. My father, ever the joker, shrugged and said, "The tines, they are changing." To this day, I swear I must have stepped through some hyperdimensional membrane into a parallel universe. The most boring and mundane alternative reality where the only difference was the choice of forks that my parents had purchased years prior. People often imagine the multiverse to be populated with interesting and bizarre permutations, but if it is truly infinite, logically most of the realities are boringly similar to ours, but different in only one minor way. This is simply the way I have come to rationalize and cope with this childhood experience. I am very serious that it happened the same way I remember it and have no other explanation. I'd gone fishing one night, and on my way back to my vehicle at about 1 a.m., while walking on the trail, I looked up to see a man walking towards me. He was dressed in jeans, a white vest, and a blue unbuttoned shirt. He had his fishing rod and bag slung on his shoulder. I stopped dead in my tracks, but he kept walking, eventually right through me. I lived in a house that was rather haunted. There was the ghost of an old man, a young girl, and a dog. Some days I would walk into my room to find all the drawers and the cupboards wide open. I witnessed the old man perched at the base of my bed at night. A girl was associated with the swimming pool. She wouldn't let anyone in the swimming pool past sunset. A dog's bark was heard loud and clear when someone would ring the doorbell. It would urinate on my dad's bedroom. You could stand there and watch as the puddle formed. The trash bins would open and close all night long, rather loudly. My brother would wake up with scratches on his body. I used to feel the weight of someone climb on and off my bed covers when everyone was asleep. My brother and I are rather sensitive. We could tell if a house is haunted energy. Although I'm not able to communicate with the dead, but I wish to someday. My aunt committed suicide while I was in my early 20s. I went home from university to grieve with the family and help around. Since I didn't have my bed or a room, I slept on the couch for the duration of my stay. The layout of the house is important, so forgive the momentary sidebar. The garage door opens into the living room, which shares an open floor plan with the kitchen. The couch is used as a divider between the spaces, kind of free-floating in the middle of the space with its back to the kitchen. The kitchen is a double mezzanine, so that if you're exiting the master bedroom, you could look over the railing into the kitchen or into the living room diagonally. So I'm on the couch with my blankets and pillows, watching porn stars quietly and trying to fall asleep when I get that creeped out feeling, like when you're reading scary stories and you just have to look behind you or something.
I tried ignoring the urge, but eventually I gave in, heaving myself up from the sunken couch to check over back into the kitchen, fully expecting nothing to be there. He was completely nude with no genitals, smooth, grayish, almost bluish skin that under the lights of the kitchen cabinets made almost transparent over his ribs and lungs. I distinctly remember watching the fast flutter of his breathing. His eyes and mouth were black holes and slanted, as if you bunched up all the skin on the back of his head in full taut. No hair, and the arms and fingers were elongated so that they hung past his knees. He didn't do anything, he just stared at me with an open mouth, but I remember feeling so afraid that I shouldn't be looking at him. I never remember falling asleep, but I quickly sprang from the couch and turned on the kitchen lights. Of course, nothing was there. I had the same dream for 2 more nights. Same thing every time. Incredibly lucid. Never remember the transition of watching television to sleep. The thing never moved closer or did anything, but always I awoke in a panic. Now, naturally my parents were curious why every morning they came downstairs the lights were all on, and when everything finally came to a head is when my stepmother and I were sharing breakfast alone. My father has taken my younger siblings out for something fun to get their minds off the approaching funeral. My stepmother isn't very spiritual, more of a soccer mom than a hippie mom. She corners me and asks what's been going on and if I'm okay, etc. I explain that I've been having nightmares and begin to divulge the dream, and I can tell she wants to speak and interrupt with great urgency. She explains, slightly panicked, that she also has been having bad dreams. In her dream, she awakes from bed scared that something is wrong with my siblings. Leaving the master bedroom to check on them across the hall, she thinks to check on me, and so peers down into the kitchen/living room, and then she sees someone standing in the kitchen, looking at her as she wakes up. While my stepmother is not spiritual, my grandmother is, and had burned sage around my aunt's house where she committed suicide to cleanse it. She has dropped off a box of my aunt's things 3 nights previously when the dream started, and had left some of the burned sage in there. It was almost completely unvoiced. Our agreement to get the sage and burn it around the house, giggling at our silliness, but hey, never had the nightmares again after that. Obviously, I can rationalize the grief does weird shit to people. Maybe it was just my psyche hallucinating. With sleep paralysis, who knows? My stepmother and I just know that it was really strange and frightening. That's all for today. If you enjoyed the video, ring that bell and subscribe.